Are you ready for the next installment of Grandma Hope's moving story? This is the second part, continuing right where we left off. If you haven't seen the first part, stop right now. Click on the card on screen or check the pinned first comment to find part 1. Don't forget to check the cover image and yellow stripe to make sure you're watching the correct video. The secrets that Grandma Hope is about to reveal will leave you breathless until the very last minute. Don't miss it. Leave your trusty like now at the beginning so you don't forget when you're wrapped up in the story. Now, Miss Hope, we're ready to hear from you again. First, I want to thank all of you who returned to hear the rest of my story. It's not easy to relive these memories, but your interest gives me strength to continue. Let me remember where we left off. Ah, yes. 15 years after my husband Alex fled that night bloody and beaten by my father. My 15-year-old son Samuel came home from downtown and told me the guys on the street said they saw a man who looked exactly like him near City Hall, and he declared with those same blue eyes his father had. I'm going to look for him. I want to know why he abandoned us. And despite everything I'd been through, despite catching Alex with my best friend Rose in her bed and being forced to give birth to Samuel right there, despite my father catching him naked with my 14-year-old sister Lucy in my parents' bed and beating him unconscious, despite 15 years of silence and no money sent, I couldn't stop Samuel from searching, because I understood that hunger to know where you come from even when the truth destroys you. If you want to know how my son spent 9 days tracking his father through our hometown, where he discovered his great-grandfather David had died, found Rose, and learned about Daniel, a brother my children didn't know existed, a son Alex had with my former best friend born with those unmistakable blue eyes that made Rose's husband Paul finally demand the truth, then traveled to the Bronx where Alex's parents lived selling cheap sunglasses at a market stall, barely making ends meet, and showed Samuel photos of his father in Italy living with an American model and 2 more blonde children, making 4 half-siblings from 3 different women, not counting the 2 Samuel and Matthew had with me, and how I sat my sons down and confessed that Samuel had actually been born in Rose's bed the day I caught them together. And my father Jack told them about Lucy and revealed that their 15-year-old cousin Antonio Alexander was actually their half-brother too. Hit that subscribe button right now because this is about learning that beautiful men with practiced lies leave trails of blue-eyed children like breadcrumbs, that secrets kept to protect your children eventually surface anyway, and that sometimes forgiveness isn't about them deserving it, but about you choosing peace at 79 years old when those same blue eyes stare back at you through 4 generations. This is part 2 of my story from Queens, New York. Where are you watching from? The move to New York City happened faster than I'd imagined. We sold what little we had: clothes, furniture, even the ring Alex gave me that I still wore out of habit. Mom refused to get rid of her Singer sewing machine in any way. This machine is our livelihood, she said, rejecting all offers. That black Singer was wrapped in old sheets and tied with thick ropes like a sacred treasure. We gathered every penny and bought bus tickets to New York City. I remember that cold November dawn when we huddled in the small bus station, each with our bundle of clothes, eyes heavy with sleep and unshed tears. The children slept on our laps, oblivious to the desperation that pushed us away. Father came almost dragged, unwillingly. Since the scandal, he barely spoke. He spent his days drinking and nights wandering around the house like a lost soul. Grandma Dorothy had been firm with him. Jack, either you come with us willingly or you'll lose what's left of your family. Michael was the last to get on the bus. He disappeared the night before to say goodbye to Monica, the girl he'd been courting. He was devastated. I'll come back someday, he repeated, holding a blue ribbon she'd given him. Lucy stayed alone at the back of the bus as if she needed to keep her distance from all of us and we from her. Throughout the trip, I didn't exchange a single word with my sister. I couldn't even look at her. As much as I tried, I could only see her and Alex together in my parents' bed. It was on the second day of travel, at a roadside bus station, that I noticed something strange about her. Lucy ran to the bathroom as soon as we got off and stayed too long in there. When she returned, she was pale with a sweaty forehead, holding on to the wall to keep from falling. Mom went after her, concerned, and returned minutes later with an expression that said it all. She's pregnant, she whispered to Grandma Dorothy. She has morning sickness. There's no way to hide it. She must be about 2 months along already. The world spun around me. She was expecting a child from my husband. The ground seemed to sink beneath my feet. Anger rose hot up my throat, mixed with a pain that seemed to have no end. A child of Alex's. Father, who was leaning against the wall smoking a cigarette, heard the conversation even from a distance. I saw his whole body tense, and something in that beaten face lit up again, an anger so intense it seemed like he was going to explode. He advanced towards Lucy, who was sitting alone near the luggage. Michael and Mom had to run to stop him. Haven't you done enough already? Mom pleaded, standing between father and Lucy. That trip was very tense, 3 days and 2 nights of travel. The bus broke down once. We were stranded for hours. When we finally arrived in New York City, the impact was great. We'd never seen so many people, so much noise, so many buildings. Grandma Dorothy took from her pocket the paper with her cousin Helena's address. It was so wrinkled and dirty it could barely be read. House number 43 was small, looked humble. Grandma was the first to get off and walk to the door. She clapped her hands. A woman in her 40s opened the door, looking distrustfully. Yes, she asked. I'm looking for Helena. I'm Dorothy, her cousin from upstate. The woman frowned. Dorothy, my mother passed away 4 years ago. Our only hope, our only connection in that huge city had died 4 years ago. Grandma Dorothy staggered, needing to lean on the door. The woman perceived our desperation and in a gesture of kindness I'll never forget, opened the door wider. I'm Apersida, Helena's daughter. Come in. Let's talk inside. And so, through the kindness of a stranger who was our only family in that big city, we took the first step in what would be our new beginning. The first days in New York City were overwhelming. The noise, the crowds, the different accent, everything felt foreign. Matthew would ask when we were going back home, and I didn't know how to explain that this was our home now. Apersida let us stay until we could rent a small house not far from there, a tenement with 2 bedrooms sharing the yard with 2 other families. It wasn't the place of our dreams, but it was our beginning. Mom put a sign in front of the house, sewing and alterations done here. The old singer was installed in a corner of the living room and soon began making its characteristic noise day and night. I helped Mom when the children were asleep. Michael got a job as a delivery boy at a nearby bakery. Father, to everyone's surprise, accepted a job at a construction warehouse that Apersida's son Benito had gotten him. The months went by and Lucy's belly grew, impossible to hide. At 5 months, it looked like she was carrying a watermelon under her dress, always pale, always quiet. One night, when everyone had retired and I was alone in the kitchen, Lucy appeared in the doorway. It was the first time in months that we were alone face to face. Hope, she said so low I could barely hear her. I wanted to tell you something. I felt my body tense. I know you'll never forgive me for what I did. I don't forgive myself, she said with a trembling voice, but I want you to know that I regret it every day. Why did you do it? I managed to ask the question that had tormented me for months. Why him of all people? Lucy lowered her gaze. I have no excuse, Hope, but the truth is I fell in love with him. I didn't want to. I swear I fought against it. I know it doesn't justify it, she continued. But I couldn't control what I felt. He made me feel special. I let out a bitter laugh. Do you really think you were special to him? That you were the only one? Lucy frowned, confused. What? I hesitated, then decided she needed to know the whole truth. Remember Rose, my best friend? I said. I caught them together at her house in her bed, the bed where she slept with her husband, the same day Samuel was born. Lucy's eyes opened wide with surprise. She covered her mouth with her hands, beginning to cry uncontrollably. My God, I didn't know. I thought that he really loved me. No, Lucy, he didn't love anyone but himself. Not me, not you, not Rose. For the first time since the scandal, I felt something different for my sister. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was understanding. After all, hadn't I myself been deceived by those same blue eyes, those same sweet words? We were all fooled, Lucy, but that doesn't mean you're innocent. You knew it was wrong. You had a choice. We stayed in silence for a time that seemed endless. The baby in her belly moved, visible even under the loose dress, and I looked away. After that conversation, we continued not speaking to each other. Unlike upstate, where we had the midwife Mary, here in the capital, everything was in the hospital. The day Lucy started feeling the pains, Mom and Grandma Dorothy took her to the hospital. When they returned, they brought in their arms a beautiful child with rosy cheeks and eyes of a blue identical to his father's. The resemblance to Alex was so strong it hurt to look at him. If you put him next to Samuel, they looked like twins despite the age difference. I'll call him Antonio Alexander, announced Lucy. Antonio in honor of our father and Alexander for his father. The first months were difficult. The child cried a lot at night from colic. The neighbors complained. Mom would stand up rocking the little one. Father was getting better little by little. The work suited him well. Over time, he returned to conversation. One day he came home and told a joke. Everyone at the table fell silent, surprised, until Grandma Dorothy let out that delicious laugh of hers. It seemed that a little bit of the father from before had returned. When Antonio Alexander turned 2, Lucy was already working in a clothing factory downtown. She would leave the child with Mom during the day. It was there she met Nelson, a handsome man with light green eyes that looked a lot like Alex's. Nelson didn't have a steady job. He lived from sporadic work, the type of man who spends more time in the bar than at home. Lucy started disappearing on weekends, saying she was doing overtime at the factory. We all knew she was with him. One day, Lucy surprised us preparing a small suitcase. "I've come to get my son. I'm leaving," she announced. "I'm going to live with Nelson. We'll get married next month." Mom became desperate. Little Antonio Alexander cried, clinging to Mom's legs. He didn't want to leave. He didn't even know his own mother well from how absent she was. "You can't just come like this and take the child," I argued. "Yes, I can." "He's my son," she replied dryly. Father, who had already grown fond of his grandson, didn't even want to see the scene. He went out to the street, probably to drink. Nelson was waiting outside with an old car, a cigarette in his mouth, a gold chain on his neck. After she left with the child, the house was left with a void. Mom cried in hiding. There was a little outfit Antonio Alexander had forgotten. Mom wouldn't wash it so she could always smell her grandson. Lucy disappeared for 2 years, didn't send news, didn't bring the child to visit. When she finally reappeared one Sunday, she was already pregnant again. The child called Nelson Dad. He'd already forgotten us. Meanwhile, the years passed quickly. After 5 years in New York City, an opportunity arose through the Federal Housing Administration, social housing being built in Queens. Father had a steady job with an employment contract for more than 4 years. We were able to register. Months later, we received the news we'd gotten one of the houses. The day we received the keys was exciting. Everything was new except our furniture. The neighborhood was under construction, streets not yet completely paved, transportation precarious, almost 2 hours to downtown. But we looked at those walls and saw a future. We expanded the house with one more bedroom. As the children grew up, life continued its rhythm. But despite everything becoming more stable, there was something gnawing at Samuel. Samuel was 15 at the most difficult age. He had the same look as his father, as if he was always scheming something. He started hanging out with a group I didn't like, older guys who didn't study or work. One night, while I was taking care of Grandma Dorothy, who was restless, Samuel came home late again. Matthew, who was waiting for his brother, went to demand explanations. "Where were you? Mom is busy with great-grandma and you're missing." "Leave me alone," Samuel replied, pushing his brother. "You're not my father." It was like lighting a fuse. Samuel lunged at his brother. The two rolled on the floor. After Matthew left to calm down, I sat with Samuel in the kitchen. While I cleaned the cut on his eyebrow, I tried to talk to him. "What's happening to you, son?" He stayed quiet for a while, then blurted it out. "Why did my father leave? Why did he never look for us?" "What did you do to him?" The question caught me by surprise. "Your father had problems, son. He did bad things. He had to leave." "What kind of bad things?" Samuel insisted. I didn't know what to answer. How to tell a teenager that his father cheated on his mother with her own sister? "The guys on the street said they saw a man who looked like me downtown near City Hall," Samuel declared. "They said it could be my father." My blood froze. "I'm going to look for him," Samuel declared with determination. "I want to meet my father. I want to know why he abandoned us." I tried to reason with him, but I saw in his eyes the same stubbornness that Alex had. In the following days, Samuel started skipping school. I found out from the neighbor that he was taking the bus downtown almost every day. He was looking for his father, I was sure. Meanwhile, Grandma Dorothy got worse. The doctor at the community health center said it was advanced senile dementia, what they were starting to call Alzheimer's disease. There were days she didn't get out of bed, didn't recognize anyone. Mom and I took turns taking care of her. Life was testing me in every possible way. 9 days later, in the wee hours of the morning, I heard the door opening. It was Samuel returning. I sat in the darkness of the living room waiting. When I saw him, I squeezed him in a hug. Later, when everyone was in the living room, he told everything. He had gone after his father, first to our hometown, where he discovered that his great-grandfather David had died a year and a half ago. Then he visited Louis Bar and heard the old stories. He reached Rose, my former friend, and discovered Daniel, the son that Alex had with her, a brother that my children didn't even know existed. "How did Mrs. Rose tell you that?" I asked, unable to believe it. Samuel explained that it was a scandal throughout the town. It happened after we left. They only discovered it when the child was born. Rose's husband Paul began to suspect. The baby was born with the clearest blue eyes, identical to his father's. Paul pressured her so much that she ended up confessing everything. Paul sold the pharmacy, left town, came back to ask for a divorce. Now Rose was a single mother living with her mother and her son, who didn't even know who his real father was. Matthew was pale, gripping the arm of the chair. It was then that I couldn't bear the secrets anymore. I told them about that day of Samuel's birth, how I found Alex and Rose together in her bed, how my water broke right there, how I had to give birth in the bed where my husband had just cheated on me. Samuel, with tears in his eyes, hugged me tightly as he had never done before. Father, silent in a corner, decided it was time to end all the secrets. He looked at the children and told them about Lucy, about how Alex seduced my own sister, how he caught them together in his and my mother's bed. He revealed that their cousin Antonio Alexander, whom they barely knew, was in fact their half-brother. Think about the silence in that room, I said. It was heavy as lead, 4 children from 3 different women. That was the legacy Alex had left behind. But the things Samuel discovered didn't stop there. He told us he'd gotten the address of his grandparents, Alex's parents, who were right here in New York City in the Bronx. He wanted to know if Matthew would dare to go with him. The following Saturday, the two went without telling me anything. When they returned, they brought a story that seemed untrue. They found their grandparents, Mr. Lewis and Mrs. Grace, at a small market stall on East Tremont Avenue, selling cheap knockoff sunglasses. They could barely make ends meet, lived in an old and small house. The elderly cried when Samuel and Matthew introduced themselves. "Our grandsons, my God," they repeated, hugging the boys. They closed the stall right away, took them to their house, gave them coffee and cornbread, the best they had. They said they didn't know the address because David had told them we'd all left town without saying where. And then came the part that impacted me the most. "Alex went to Italy 10 years ago," Matthew said. "A modeling agency saw him in a bar in New York City. They thought with that height and those blue eyes he could be successful abroad. He sends letters occasionally," Matthew continued with a bitter voice, "maybe one a year. Never money, although he earned well, just promises that one day he would take them to live there." The elderly showed photos Alex sent him in various cities, always well-dressed, smiling, showing the good life he was leading. "And us here going through hardships, me sewing day and night to support the children. He has another family there, Mom," said Matthew suddenly. "He lives with an American model, has 2 children." The grandparents showed photos of them together, beautiful blonde children. "They couldn't officially marry because he's still married to you here in America, but they live as if they were married." That was like a stab in the chest. While I was killing myself working, raising our children alone, he was there living another life as if we had never existed. He'd formed a new family while not even bothering to resolve the situation with me. Not even a divorce request, nothing. I felt so humiliated, so ashamed in front of my family. My children came back different after that search, especially Samuel. That blind admiration he felt for his father disappeared like smoke. He realized that Alex really didn't care about anyone but himself. Better the naked and raw truth than a beautiful lie. The boys gave their paternal grandparents the address of our house. Mr. Lewis and Mrs. Grace started coming to see us from time to time. At first only on Sundays, then they started coming even to the children's birthdays. The elderly always brought a cake bought at the bakery and some simple little gift. It was strange to see them at first, but little by little we created a mutual respect. They were simple people who had also been abandoned by their son like us. Grandma Dorothy passed away a few months after all those discoveries. She spent a few days in the hospital, us always taking turns not to leave her alone. I think she waited until knowing we were all on the right track, that the mystery of the father had been solved. At the funeral, Lucy appeared with Antonio Alexander, now a young man of 16. It was the first time we reconnected in so many years. The cousins met, noticed the resemblances, the same chin, the same eyes, the same blood. Lucy seemed happy with Nelson. They had 2 more little girls. I was happy for her. A lawyer looked for me years later when Samuel was almost 20. Alex had requested a divorce in Italy. I signed without thinking twice. I wanted to get rid of that name, of that shadow. One day the phone rang at home, the fixed one we'd managed to install after 2 years on the waiting list. Every time the phone rang, Samuel would get anxious, thinking it was his father. Once it really was Alex. I could tell by Samuel's face that it was him. He turned white as wax, then red, then white again. From the conversation I heard, his father said he couldn't come to live or visit America because of his work, that he was doing very well as a fashion photographer. But he invited Samuel and Matthew to go live with him in Italy. Samuel talked about nothing else. He walked around the house restless, asking if we thought he would adapt if it wasn't the opportunity of his life. I let him choose. Months later, he left. His father sent the ticket, the papers, everything arranged. At the airport, Samuel hugged me tightly, but I felt he was anxious to leave. He didn't even look back when he went through the boarding gate. I felt like trash, as if I hadn't been enough, as if all those years raising him alone weren't worth anything. Matthew, who was already married to Maria and she was pregnant, was more sensible. "Mom, my place is here. I'm not going to leave my family to go after a man who never cared about me." In the end, Samuel went to live like a rich man in Italy with his father. He still calls on the phone, sends photos of trips, of new cars. He married a foreigner, a beautiful girl. He had 4 children, one more handsome than the other, all with the same blue eyes as their grandfather. A curse that seems will never end. Matthew had two boys who are the joy of my life, Antonio and Carlos. I also tried to rebuild my life. I met a divorced man, Claudio, handsome, educated, manager of a shoe store at Macy's. I went to live with him in a nice house in the Astoria neighborhood. At first, everything was rosy. He gave me gifts, took me out to dinner, things I had never done with Alex, but I received the same blow as before. He was always seeing his ex because of his daughter, and later I discovered they always slept together. I returned to my parents' house at 43 years old, head down once again with two suitcases and a broken heart. After that, I never was with anyone again. I became afraid of men. Sometimes I wonder what I would feel if I saw Alex again after so many years. Would I still feel that burning anger, or would I feel nothing at all? The truth is that love and hate are two sides of the same coin. For many years, I didn't know which of the two I felt more strongly. Now I mainly feel indifference. And that is perhaps the greatest victory of all, to look at someone who once meant everything to you and feel nothing. That is true freedom. The house in Queens finally got paid off after so much sacrifice. Today, at 79 years old, I look back and see that life is made of ups and downs. There are days I wake up with pains all over my body, a consequence of the sleepless nights sewing. But it soon passes when I hear the laughter of my grandchildren and great-grandchildren filling the house on Sundays. Matthew brings the whole family. Samuel has come to America 3 times in all these years. He never brought his wife, but he brought two of his daughters, Jennifer and Emily. They are precious with hair as golden as wheat. Their father's eyes, that blue that haunts me across generations. The last time he came, Samuel surprised me. We were sitting in the yard watching the children play. Suddenly, he took my hand. He had tears in his eyes. "Mom, forgive me for leaving like that," he said. "I chased after a dream and left behind what really mattered." He told me that after getting to know his real father, living with him, he understood the sacrifices I had made alone. "I love you more than anything in this world." It took me years to understand the value of a mother who never gives up on her children. I don't know if I believe all those beautiful words. After many years, I've understood that forgiveness is not a destination, but a path we travel every day. Forgiving Alex, Lucy, Rose hasn't erased the scars, but it has eased my soul. The hardest thing has been to forgive myself for having blindly trusted, for having felt insufficient for so long. Sometimes, when looking into the blue eyes of my grandchildren, I no longer see the betrayal, but the continuation of life, the miracle that is born even from the deepest wounds. This hasn't been easy or quick. There are days when resentment returns like a storm, but little by little I've learned to let go, not for them, but for me. Today, at my 79 years, I can say that I feel peace, something I never thought possible. The pain hasn't completely disappeared, but it's no longer what defines me. Lucy and I reconciled years later, though we're not as close as we once were. She's a grandmother now, too. Antonio Alexander has children of his own. We see each other at family gatherings, speak politely, even hug. But we both know that some wounds, though healed, leave scars that never completely fade. Rose I never saw again after leaving that town. I heard she passed away 10 years ago. Part of me felt sad when I learned of her death. Another part felt nothing at all. Daniel, her son with Alex, I never met. He's out there somewhere with those same blue eyes, another piece of Alex's legacy scattered across the world. I still sew sometimes, though not burial shrouds anymore. I swore I'd never touch white fabric for the dead again. Now I make dresses for my great-granddaughters, little outfits for the babies that keep arriving. The Singer machine Mom brought from that town, wrapped in sheets like a sacred treasure, still works. It sits in the corner of my living room, a reminder of how far we've come. From that house behind the cemetery where we sewed clothes for corpses by candlelight, to this paid-off house in Queens where 4 generations gather on Sundays. Father passed away 12 years ago, sober, at peace, surrounded by family. He'd stopped drinking years before, had become the storyteller he once was. In his last days, he held my hand and said, "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from that blue-eyed devil." I told him there was nothing to forgive. We'd all been fooled by Alex in our own ways. Mom followed him 2 years later. She died with a smile on her face, her grandchildren and great-grandchildren all around her. Michael still lives nearby with Alina. They have 3 grown children, all successful. He never went back to our hometown, never saw Monica again, but he's happy. That's what matters. If my story has moved you, I invite you to share it with others who might need to hear it. There are so many women out there living similar stories, betrayed by husbands who seemed perfect, deceived by men with beautiful eyes and practiced lies. So many mothers raising children alone, wondering if they're enough, carrying shame that isn't theirs to carry. I want them to know you are enough. You were always enough. The problem wasn't you. It was never you. And one day, if you're lucky, you'll look at those who hurt you and feel nothing at all. That's when you'll know you've won. Subscribe to hear more stories like mine, stories of survival, of rebuilding, of learning that sometimes the greatest strength is simply refusing to let the bastards break you. Because they tried, my children. Oh, how they tried. But here I am at 79 years old, surrounded by 4 generations of love. Here I am with a paid-off house and a heart that's learned to forgive, not for them, but for me. Here I am with blue-eyed great-grandchildren who carry his blood but not his cruelty. And here I am telling you, as my name indicates, hope is the last thing to lose, even when you're 17 and pregnant, forced to give birth in your best friend's betrayal bed. Even when you're 32 and your son leaves to chase the father who abandoned him. Even when you're 79 and the blue eyes still haunt you across generations. Hope is the last thing to lose, and I never lost mine. Share your story with us in comment section. If you've given birth in circumstances that should have broken you but didn't, if you've discovered betrayals that multiplied like Alex's blue-eyed children across states and countries, if you've watched your sons chase fathers who were never worthy of the title, if you've sewn burial shrouds or anything else by candlelight to feed children a man abandoned, if you've been told you imagined things when you saw the truth with your own eyes, if you've had to choose between keeping toxic family or starting over in a city where nobody knows your name, know this. You will survive, the blue eyes stop haunting you eventually, and 79 comes faster than you think, but it also comes with a peace you earned through every sleepless night. Forgiveness isn't about them deserving it, it's about you choosing to stop carrying their weight. Some wounds heal into scars that tell your story, and sometimes the greatest revenge is simply outliving them all with your hope intact. Choose peace. Choose yourself because, as my grandmother Dorothy always said, trust is earned, not owed, family is chosen, not automatic, and the devil may have blue eyes, but you have something stronger. You have hope that refuses to die. See you in the next video. Take care and subscribe to stay connected.